All done. All silent. Going. Gone. So congratulations.
Welcome to the Current Market Insights podcast, brought to you by Harris Partners Real Estate. Each episode, we chat with real estate author and industry leader Peter O'Malley to discuss the current property market conditions and provide insights to assist you on your property journey.
Welcome to Current Market Insights. Peter, as always, pleasure to have you with us.
Yeah, good to see you, Ciaran.
Peter, this week just want to have a chat about sales campaigns, advertising and marketing. Tell me, what does a standard sales marketing campaign look like for you in real estate?
Ciaran, there is no standard campaign. There's the campaign that the real estate agent and the vendor agree upon. There's some interesting trends that are forming in the marketplace at the moment. Whilst the market has been performing well to begin the year, there's no doubt that vendors are very, very hesitant around putting their property on the market at the moment, so stock levels are low. And part of that is vendors don't want to commit thousands of dollars up front on an advertising campaign that may not yield the result they want. So that's having a few side effects. We're seeing the typical off-market campaigns emerge, which is symptomatic of a softer market where vendors are happy to sell if they're offered the right price but don't want to put any money behind it. And something that I'm seeing for the first time in the marketplace, Ciaran, is that a lot of real estate agents are increasingly only listing their properties on one of the major two portals. And I don't think I can ever remember that happening in the internet age where agents were just favouring one of the portals. They seemed very happy to always go on both portals, but I guess that's a function of price and risk that both vendors and agents are saying, which of the two portals can we drop? Which is the one we need to keep? And then it becomes, there's a third player in the portal world called Homely, which are increasing in popularity. And if the consumer and the agent is able to forego using domain or realestate.com, they can then go on the agent's very own website. And there's 3 websites there that they can list on, 2 of which won't cost anything, being the agent's website and the Homely portal site, and they're selecting between either realestate.com and domain. And that's an increasing trend.
You've touched on a few points here, and obviously we'll try and break each of these down, but just in terms of how, I guess, that single portal is chosen, do you think that's mostly being driven by the agent or by preference from the seller themselves?
I'm imagining, I'm not involved in the conversations, of course, and I've seen this trend from Manly to Parramatta occurring in the market with increasing regularity. So it's a trend that is very interesting as far as I'm concerned. I think increasingly the consumer is hesitant to invest past a certain dollar amount in this environment, and the agent's saying, well, I can run an effective campaign with the budget that you're prepared to put up on this. And the only downside is that you won't be on one of the 2 major portals, but most buyers do tend to fluctuate between the 2. And the more the real estate industry trains the consumer to understand that not all listings are on the one website, the more the consumer or the home buyer, property buyer, will be inclined to bounce between the 2 major portals looking for all of the stock that's available in the market.
That's a really interesting point, and we have talked before about people who only list on one portal. We talked about this in a kind of different tangent, but do you think that there is a percentage of the population out there who still, religiously only use one portal and are therefore going to miss out on these properties?
Oh, potentially. I wouldn't say that there's not, but I think the more the real estate industry only lists certain properties on one of the 2 major portals, the more the consumer will be trained to go widespread in their search. Now, any agent that's only listing a property on one of the 2 major portals really needs an effective campaign as far as databasing and email SMS campaign behind it from their own website to ensure that they are getting proper market traction out there. But at the end of the day, Ciaran, Australia is the most expensive market in the world for real estate advertising, and that is because real estate agents have acted like advertising executives for major media companies for the last 30 years and have gone out and religiously sold overpriced, unnecessary advertising to the consumer. And now the consumer is saying, this is the digital age. I shouldn't be paying $2,500, $3,500 up front to put my property on a website. This doesn't make sense. You've put a flyer in my letterbox saying that you've got buyers that might be interested in my home. Well, now it's time to deliver them.
Absolutely, and I think it's an unfortunate side effect, as you say, of the way agents have acted over the last 30 or 40 years, that now the portals view themselves as indispensable, and their costs have only gone up to reflect their utility in the marketplace up to this point. We have definitely talked about the digitization of real estate and how people are certainly becoming more savvy. Do you think, as a seller, is there any particular, thing or measure they should be looking for to help influence which of the portals they might prefer to be on?
I think take the advice of the realtor that they're thinking of listing with and ask for evidence-based data. So whatever the agent recommends, they can go with, and they don't need to exclusively list on. Well, why do you say that? And can you show me data to back that up? So I had a client recently that wanted to upgrade their ad on one of the websites, and I said, well, look, this is the website that I would encourage you to do it on, because when I break the data on your campaign down, that's the one that's bringing us the most inquiry at the moment. I had an evidence-based assessment as to where the buyers were looking at that particular property, and that's the key with data, is that an agent should have a nuanced understanding of buyer performance through their data.
And I think it highlights that a good agent should be able to answer any questions asked by a seller about, what's happening in the campaign and where should we be looking to target, say, an upgrade, like you mentioned. The data should be there to back that up, and a good agent should be able to support that.
No, that's right, indeed.
Now, you mentioned, Peter, off-market. It's a term that has been waxing and waning in popularity in real estate over the last few years. You mentioned that it's usually a measure of a softer market. Given, you could argue it's been a pretty soft period with interest rate rises, and, we're in a softer market compared to how we were. What do you think the role is of off-market right now, particularly as we're talking about advertising as a big part of that?
What I've seen so far is a lot of failed campaigns from 2022. The vendors are happy and willing to sell this year in 2023, but they're not happy to put another $5,000 to $10,000 down on a campaign. And I'm seeing that as a highly probable section of the vendor market, if you like, that will try off market this year, where they're saying to the agents, I'm still happy to sell this property, but you've got to bring me the buyer. I'm not going to give you $10,000 to see if you can find a buyer for me. So if you want the sale, if you'd like to commission Mr. or Mrs. Real Estate Agent, you go and find the buyer and bring them to my door, and you're more than welcome to show them through. Naturally, there'd be an agency agreement in place and a contract of sale would exist, but they're probably the most likely candidates to want to go off market at the moment. Vendors that know that they have an aggressive price expectations and don't want to test whether that price expectation is achievable in the current market is probably the next category of vendor that is saying to real estate agents, feel free to push this around off market, and if you get interest at our price, we're here to sell, but if you don't, we're happy to wait for the next cycle.
No, certainly good insight, and I was going to ask a question about that. The shift from off-market in the past few years has been, let's test the water because we've got aggressive price expectations and see if there is any market for us. Yeah. But as you say, it's a great mechanism now for people who have potentially paid for campaigns and couldn't sell.
Yeah, and then there's a third category of person that goes off-market, Ciaran, and that's the person that is encouraged to go off-market by the real estate agent. The agent will say, let me try this off market for 14 to 21 days and see what response we get. And if it doesn't work, you won't have to pay us any money. And then they ask the vendor to sign a 90-day agency agreement, which the vendor says, well, I'm off market for 14 to 21 days, so not sure why the agent wants 90 or maybe 60 days, but it'll be fine. And what happens is the vendor's motivation to sell increases, then the agent has the listing wrapped up for the next 60, 90 days. And it's that point they say, well, now to go on market with a full campaign, it's going to cost you $5,000, $7,500, $10,000, whatever can be agreed upon. If the vendor wants to go and try another agent at that point, they can't, because 3 weeks earlier, when they weren't as motivated, they signed a 60 or a 90-day agreement. So that's one that vendors need to be aware of, is that using a 14, 21-day off-market campaign is fine. Just don't go and sign a 60, 90-day exclusive agency agreement.
So that's a good point. I mean, a lot of agency agreements that I've seen, over the years have kind of like a fixed time frame in them. as a seller, can you confidently stand up to your agent and say, look, I'm happy for you to try this, but I only want to give you 21 days and put that on paper?
The worst word in selling, the one that I flinch at the most, Ciaran, is standard. So at the start of this chat, you said, what's a standard advertising campaign? I said there is no standard advertising campaign. It's what you agree upon. There is no standard agency agreement, and there is no standard contract of sale. It's what you negotiate, and a negotiation needs to be a two-way street that works for all parties. So if you go to Robert Cialdini's Influence, for example, he will say that if things are printed and in writing, they have more formality about them. But that is a principle of influence. That is not a principle of law. So if you see a term in an agency agreement that is printed and looks all official, it is just part of a greater sell, and you have every right to scratch that out and negotiate that clause, figure, contract, to your satisfaction as a consumer. The most powerful time a consumer will ever have over a real estate agent is before they sign an agency agreement. Unbeknownst to most consumers, once they sign an agency agreement, there's a lot of clauses and conditions in that agency agreement that they may not be aware to the degree that they're governed by.
No, that's good advice. And I think, certainly my own experience is it's important to read the fine print. It's one of those great jokes in any kind of sales across the world that the fine print's a bit confusing. We mostly ignore it. But yeah, sellers need to be reassured that they have plenty of power to adjust and negotiate with their agent before they do sign.
Well, let's go back to the fine print. If you don't understand it, don't sign it.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
If you don't understand it, scratch it out.
Yeah. Well, look, speak to a trusted advisor, get a friend, ask a lawyer. There's absolutely, sellers shouldn't feel pressured to sign on the day. Look, I think we'll keep it relatively short today, Peter. I think it's been interesting to look at the changes in campaigns and how they are so variable and how, sellers are having so much more, I guess, difficult decisions are needing to be made around what they do with their property. Given that the market, is in a bit of flux at the moment, do you think there is utility in maintaining the off-market campaign through 2023, or is it time to start looking at just, forcefully getting back out there with solid advertising?
Look, I wouldn't go as far as to say you should never sell off-market, but in 90% of instances, I encourage clients to go on-market. I think it's better to understand what the current marketplace is prepared to pay for your property. And at that point, once the bids have rolled in, then you can make a decision to keep the asset or sell the asset. That's easier for us to do because we at Harris Partners have a risk-free selling process where the consumer only pays for the advertising campaign if it ends in a sale, where a lot of the models in the industry, the agent wants that paid up front, and it's quite significant. I think in terms of just closing today, Ciaran, on advertising and marketing, what I see in the industry is real estate agents get the vendor to overspend on the marketing campaign, and then the real estate agent underquotes the price expectations to the marketplace. And buyers find themselves in a frenzy to try and purchase the respective property, not because there's a $10,000 campaign behind it, but because the property's advertised $20,000, $25,000 below market value. So the easiest thing in the world to sell is money, free, easy money. If you promote a property 20, 25% below its fair value, you'll get an enormous response on your advertising campaign, but it's not because you spent $10,000, it's because it's mispriced on the low side. And then obviously, as we know, that creates competition, and the competition leads to most often the property returning back to fair market value or close to it. So I think the easiest way and the best way to attract genuine buyers to your property is with good imagery, good video photography that showcases the property, and a fair market price as the marketing price, not an underquote. And from that fair marketing price, competition will build, and then it's a case of who's prepared to pay the most for this property to own it.
All really solid advice, Peter. Look, as always, I really appreciate you coming on and answering our questions today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks, Ciaran.
Thanks for joining us on the Current Market Insights podcast, brought to you by Harris Partners Real Estate, the podcast providing real estate insights you won't find anywhere else.